Before borders, before oil, before Baghdad carried its modern name, there was silt, there was water, there was heat. Under the same sun that burns across Iraq today, two rivers cut through dust and plain, bringing life where almost nothing should have lived. The Tigris, the Euphrates, fast water and slow water, flood and residue, promise and threat. Between them, people learned a hard lesson early. Fertile land is not the same as easy land. Rich soil can still break a body. Water can feed a field, then wash it away. A river can rescue one season and ruin the next. So the real question was never only how civilization began here. The deeper question was this: how do human beings build order in a place that keeps testing them? This is where it begins. The south of ancient Iraq was not a landscape waiting politely for greatness. It was marsh, mudflat, reed bed, open plain. In some places, there was fish, wildfowl, clay, and thick soil left by floodwater. In others, there was glare, salt, insects, and uncertainty. Rain did not solve the problem. In the Deep South, rain was not enough. If people wanted food, they had to move water by hand, by channel, by plan. That need came first. Not kings, not monuments, not philosophy. Need. A field too far from a river dried hard and cracked. A flood that came wrong drowned seed and labor together. A village without storage starved after one bad season. So people watched the land closely. They learned its timing. They marked where water spread, where it settled, where it pulled back. Then they answered with work. They cut small channels. They raised banks. They shaped basins. They directed floodwater instead of waiting for mercy. This was the first quiet revolution. Problem: human response. System: once water could be guided, planting changed. Barley became reliable enough to anchor life. Wheat, millet, sesame, flax, dates, onions, lentils, peas, cucumbers, figs, and pomegranates entered a wider pattern of use. People used flint-bladed sickles, paddles for threshing, wooden plows, and eventually plows that could sow seed directly into furrows. Animals trampled grain, winds separated chaff, fields were left fallow, crops were rotated. None of this looked glamorous. All of it mattered. Because surplus changes the scale of human possibility. When a harvest produced more than one family could immediately consume, time appeared. Not leisure in the modern sense, more like released human capacity. Someone could fire pottery. Someone could weave textiles. Someone could haul mud for bricks. Someone could stand in a shrine. Someone could count what came in and what went out. The first bigger shift was not simply economic. It was social. Once food supported more than farmers, life divided into roles. That division began in the body. A worker bent in a field. Another packed reeds. Another kneaded clay into bricks. Another repaired a canal wall. Another measured grain. Another watched storehouses. Another recorded obligations. The village became more than clustered survival. It became organized dependence. And organized dependence creates institutions. The ground itself pushed this forward. In southern Mesopotamia, building stone was scarce, but clay was everywhere. So clay became architecture, accounting, storage, memory. Mud bricks rose in walls and platforms. Clay jars held grain and oil. Clay tablets held marks. Even civilization here had the texture of earth pressed by hands. At first, settlements remained small. but small places with working water systems tend to attract more people. Population rose, houses multiplied. Labor had to be coordinated. Canals had to be maintained. Fields had to be assigned. Harvests had to be stored and redistributed. With every practical problem solved, a larger one appeared behind it. That is how a village starts leaning toward a city. Eridu is often named among the earliest southern centers. Uruk would become the giant, not by accident, by concentration. More people, more fields, more canals, more storage, more ritual, more administration. The logic is simple. If one canal helps one community survive, a network of canals can sustain many. If one granary protects one season, several storehouses can buffer risk across years. If one shrine gathers local trust, a temple can gather labor, goods, and authority. The temple mattered because it did more than host prayer. It organized life. In the ancient city, religion was not a separate compartment. It was structure. Land, labor, offerings, redistribution, festivals, legitimacy, memory. The gods did not float above the economy. They sat inside it. So the settlement expanded around sacred and practical centers. Brick by brick, load by load, decision by decision. By around 3200 BCE, Uruk had become something the world had not really seen before at that scale. A true city. Monumental mud brick buildings, dense population, specialized labor, administrative control, long-distance exchange, visual symbols of power, a wall later linked in memory to Gilgamesh, and crucially, marks on clay made to track goods, rations, and workers. Writing did not emerge here because people suddenly wanted literature. It emerged because complexity demanded memory stronger than speech. A spoken promise vanishes. A tablet remains. The earliest signs were practical. Counts, allocations, deliveries, barley issued, labor owed, oil received, herds noted. The reed stylus pressed wedges into wet clay, and administration gained a second brain. From pictographs to cuneiform, the script widened. What began in accounting became law, hymn, myth, omen, diplomacy, mathematics, instruction. The system had consequences. Once transactions could be recorded, they could be compared. Once labor could be listed, it could be managed at scale. Once obligations could be written, power could travel farther than the human voice. A city is not just a bigger village. It is a machine for coordination. And machines need fuel. For Mesopotamia, that fuel was grain, labor, belief, and information. With the city came measurement. Weights had to match. Volumes had to mean the same thing in different hands. Time mattered. Deliveries mattered. Wages mattered. In later periods, silver by weight served as a standard of value even where grain still fed households more directly. A shekel could signify worth. Grain could pay laborers. Merchants carried weights. Authorities punished false measures. Fairness was never perfect, but standards had become necessary because exchange had become too large for improvisation. And exchange was growing. Mesopotamia had abundance, but not completeness. There was grain, clay, reeds, fish, dates, textiles, oils. There was not enough timber, stone, or metal. So need reached outward. Trade began because local success exposed local lack. Boats moved along rivers. Donkeys crossed routes over land. Goods from the Levant, Anatolia, the Gulf, Iran, and farther east entered Mesopotamian circuits. Wood, copper, silver, gold, semi-precious stones, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, carnelian linked to the Indus world. Trade changed more than wealth. It stretched awareness. A merchant had to know routes, partners, risks, distances, values, and seasons. A city that handled trade needed docks, warehouses, roads, accounting, contracts, guards, and trust backed by institutions. Long-distance exchange rewarded predictability. Predictability rewarded administration. So the city thickened into a system. Workshops concentrated labor. Textile production could employ huge numbers of women. Pottery, metallurgy, and brickmaking shaped industrial districts. Boats needed builders. Builders needed timber. Temples needed offerings. Households needed bread, beer, oil, cloth, tools, and fuel. Every necessity leaned on another. The urban world was becoming interlocked. As cities expanded, space itself became organized. Houses clustered along lanes. Workshops settled near supply. Storage moved closer to authority. Temples rose on platforms above the ordinary line of roofs, making hierarchy visible before a single word was spoken. The city could now be read in brick. There were places for worship, places for labor, places for exchange, places for administration, and edges where fields met walls and reminded everyone that urban life still depended on the patient work of agriculture. That visual order changed behavior. A farmer arriving with grain entered a system larger than his household. A merchant approaching a dock entered a world of inspection, weights, obligations, and expected payment. A laborer reporting for work entered a chain of command. To live in the city was to move through spaces designed by other people's needs. This produced a new kind of mentality. In a village, most people know who made the bread, who owns the animals, who can be trusted, who is in debt. In a city, personal knowledge begins to fail, so substitutes appear. Seals, tokens, tablets, witnesses, standardized containers, account rooms, officials. The city invents devices for trust because it can no longer rely on familiarity alone. This is one reason writing mattered so much. It did not merely preserve language. It stabilized relationships between strangers. A shipment recorded on clay could be checked later. A field allotment could be remembered beyond one season. A debt could follow a person. A king's order could outlast the messenger. Once the written sign enters administration, memory stops being fully human and becomes infrastructural. Religion evolved with this scale as well. The gods of Mesopotamia were not distant abstractions. They had houses, estates, staffs, rituals, and calendars. Temples could own land, receive offerings, direct labor, and act as centers of redistribution. Priests and priestesses did not stand outside economic life. They operated inside one of its most important institutions. Devotion and logistics shared walls. From that fusion came the great raised temple complexes that later ages would call ziggurats. Their significance was practical as much as symbolic. They organized labor, displayed authority, anchored urban identity, and created elevated sacred space in a land where height itself had to be manufactured from mud. A towering platform in a flat plain says something simple and powerful. Humans have imposed form here. The city also generated rhythm. Dawn labor, midday heat, evening return, market activity, deliveries, offerings, instruction, repair, petition, celebration, mourning. Unlike the romance of distant ruins, ancient urban life was repetitive. The same routes were walked, the same tablets stacked, the same canals inspected, the same complaints brought before officials. But repetition is not emptiness. Repetition is how systems endure. Even leisure reflected structure. Board games have been found in Mesopotamian contexts. Music moved through courts, rituals, and households. Children played with clay rattles, model boats, and wheeled toys. None of this sits outside civilization. It shows what civilization protects when it works well enough. Not only survival, but routine, skill, amusement, training, and social texture. That texture matters because civilization is often described from the top down. Kings, temples, battles, laws. But most people met the system at ground level, in wages paid as grain, in a ration jar, in an interest charge, in a summons, in a festival procession, in the expectation that work done today would fit a pattern laid down before they were born. Then political form caught up. At first, southern Mesopotamia consisted of city-states, each with its own rulers, temples, patron gods, territories, ambitions, and rivalries. This made sense at a smaller scale. A canal region, a local cult center, a defensive perimeter. But interdependence and competition were rising together. Water systems crossed boundaries. Trade routes linked neighbors to strangers. Prestige mattered. Control mattered more. So leadership hardened. Rulers became builders, judges, military organizers, and managers of labor. Their names were stamped into bricks. Their victories were carved in stone. Their duty was not abstract. Build the canal. Raise the wall, supply the temple, protect the harvest, defeat the rival, return with materials, feed the workers, maintain favor with the gods. This is how practical management becomes kingship, not as a theory first, as an accumulation of functions. And once kingship exists, hierarchy deepens around it. Administrators, overseers, priests, merchants, soldiers, laborers, dependents, enslaved people. Records distinguish ranks. Law distinguishes ranks. Punishment distinguishes ranks. The city teaches everyone where they stand. But it also teaches something else. Scale requires abstraction. A ruler cannot know every worker personally. A temple cannot remember every ration by heart. A trader cannot negotiate across regions without shared measures and repeated forms. So knowledge itself becomes institutional. Schools train scribes. Tablets preserve formulas. Lists classify the world. Bureaucracy grows not because humans love paperwork, but because complexity punishes vagueness. This is the point where civilization begins to feel less like a settlement and more like an operating system. By the middle of this story, the stakes have changed. We are no longer only watching people survive a difficult environment. We are watching them govern consequences of their own success. More land under cultivation meant more canals to repair. More grain meant more taxation and redistribution. More workers meant more supervision. More trade meant more contracts. More contracts meant more disputes. More disputes meant more law. Law in Mesopotamia did not arrive as a clean moral revelation. It emerged from friction. Property boundaries, debt, labor obligations, injury, marriage, inheritance, wages, fraud, leasing, theft, transport, slavery, responsibility for shoddy work, responsibility for broken dikes, responsibility for damaged crops. What looks grand from a distance often begins in arguments no family can avoid. The famous laws associated with Hammurabi, centuries after early Sumerian city life began, show how developed this legal thinking had become. Nearly every line speaks from daily life. Contracts, prices, class difference, penalties. The state asserting that order can be named in advance. Not perfectly, not equally, but deliberately. That distinction matters. Because once judgment is written, authority becomes repeatable. And once authority becomes repeatable, power becomes impersonal. That is the threshold of bureaucracy. Bureaucracy. In this world, a person could be known not only by kin or reputation, but by status within a system. Free landholder, palace dependent, slave, tenant, debtor, official, scribe, soldier, priestess, merchant, weaver. The categories did not capture all of life, but they shaped real outcomes. What one owed, what one could own, what punishment one might face, what protection one might receive. Administration reached into storage, labor, taxation, and correspondence. Tablets could list canal workers and supervisors. Tablets could record grain rations. Tablets could track debts in silver and grain. Tablets could send royal orders across distance. An empire, later on, would depend on this habit of written command as much as on armies. And armies were coming into sharper focus too. Once wealth accumulates in fields, storehouses, routes, and routes, it must be defended or seized. Mesopotamian political history is full of this tension. One city expands, another resists. Alliances form, walls rise, kings boast of campaigns. Conquest becomes a means of acquiring not just land, but labor, tribute, raw materials, and legitimacy. The Akkadian Empire showed how far centralization could go. Later Babylonian and Assyrian states pushed scale even further. Administration no longer served only one city and its nearby fields. It linked large territories, diverse populations, military obligations, road systems, provincial officials, and ordered flows of resources. In Assyria, knowledge itself became an arm of rule. Omen texts, royal correspondence, scholarly tablets, medical writings, epics, and lexical lists gathered in royal collections such as Ashurbanipal's library at Nineveh. A king could present himself not only as conqueror, but as curator of the world. That is a striking development. The same civilization that began by counting barley would eventually classify stars. Mathematics grew from trade and administration, but it did not stay there. Mesopotamian thinkers used a base 60 system whose afterlife still surrounds us. 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute. Angles measured through that inheritance. Astronomical observation, calendar keeping, prediction, and divination intertwined. Priests and scholars watched the skies because states needed time, ritual needed timing, and rulers wanted signs. There was another consequence of scale. Information began to travel upward while commands traveled down. A local harvest became a provincial figure. A provincial figure became part of royal expectation. The farther authority moved from the field, the more it depended on reports. This is why scribes, messengers, seals, and archives mattered so much. They were not ornaments of civilization. They were the nerves. And like any nervous system, they could misfire. A delayed tablet meant a delayed decision. A false wait distorted exchange. A corrupt official widened suffering far from the palace. Bureaucracy can increase fairness by standardizing procedure. It can also hide cruelty behind procedure. Mesopotamia understood both sides early. Royal inscriptions praised justice, but ordinary documents reveal penalties, exploitation, and constant negotiation between rule and reality. Even so, people kept building through that tension. They invested in walls because raiders were real. They stored grain because famine was real. They wrote contracts because memory failed. They studied omens because uncertainty never left. Civilization did not remove fear. It organized responses to fear. That may be its most enduring lesson. Human beings do not wait for perfect conditions before making systems. They make systems because conditions are imperfect. In ancient Iraq, every canal was a wager, every tablet a defense against confusion, every law a partial answer to conflict, every city a concentration of hope and risk in the same place. So civilization climbed another level. From canal to field, from field to surplus, from surplus to city, from city to writing, from writing to law, from law to empire, from empire to knowledge systems that outlived empires. And yet all of this was still lived one day at a time. In a small house off a narrow street, bread dough waits beneath a cloth. In a courtyard, a woman kneads barley and emmer, then feeds a small fire with gathered fuel. A child shakes a clay rattle. Someone returns with water. Someone else checks a store jar. The day will be ordinary and heavy. Meals have to be made. Cloth has to be repaired. Neighbors will pass. News will move in fragments. Somewhere nearby, a shrine receives incense. Somewhere farther off, a foreman counts laborers. The city is vast in concept, but intimate in sensation. Heat on brick, flour on hands, smoke in cloth, dust on feet. In another room, a boy training as a scribe presses signs into damp clay. He repeats them again and again. The lesson is not creative freedom. It is disciplined memory. Copy the sign, copy the line, copy the list. Learn the account, learn the formula. Learn the world as the institution has arranged it. If he succeeds, he will enter one of the most powerful professions ever built on quiet attention. Elsewhere, a worker stands in mud at the edge of a canal, lifting basket after basket. His body is part of the infrastructure. His labor will not be remembered by name in epic verse. But without him, the city loses water, the field loses yield, and the tablet loses meaning. That is the human truth inside all large systems. Civilization is intimate effort scaled beyond recognition. But scale creates fragility. The same irrigation that made southern Mesopotamia productive could also damage the soil. Salts accumulated in intensively watered fields. Land had to be managed carefully. Yields could decline. Drought could hit. Floods could come wrong. Canals silted up. Maintenance could falter under weak rule. The environment that nourished cities also imposed a permanent bill for keeping them alive. Political strain amplified ecological strain. Dynasties changed. Rivals fought. Central authority weakened, then hardened, then weakened again. Trade routes shifted. Military campaigns drained labor and resources. High administration could coordinate great works, but it could also overreach. Empires stretched beyond what they could hold comfortably. Local communities bore the weight of decisions made far away. Economic pressure entered the household in familiar forms. Debt, loss of land, dependence on institutions, vulnerability to bad harvests. The legal system sometimes tried to reset imbalance through debt cancellation or royal edict, but relief itself proves how chronic the pressure had become. None of this produced one simple collapse. That is the wrong expectation. Mesopotamian history is not a single rise and fall. It is a long sequence of adaptation, concentration, strain, reorganization, conquest, inheritance, and return. Cities decline, then revive under new rulers. One language yields to another in administration, yet cuneiform continues. One dynasty disappears, but its methods remain available. Fragility here was not only the possibility of ending, it was the certainty of constant adjustment. Still, there were moments when the system visibly frayed. A canal neglected for too long. A field whitening with salt. A border town exposed. A palace demanding more than a region could spare. A war interrupting trade. A library broken and scattered after conquest. When Nineveh fell in 612 BCE, even the great royal library associated with Ashurbanipal did not survive as a serene archive. Tablets broke. Collections were smashed and dispersed. Empire proved mortal, even when knowledge remained buried in the ruins, waiting for another age to read it. And yet the story does not stop where a city burns. It moves. What was learned in Mesopotamia passed outward and forward through successive worlds. Administrative habits, legal traditions, monumental kingship, imperial logistics, astronomy, mathematics, scribal discipline, and urban planning did not remain sealed between the rivers. Assyria absorbed and extended older Mesopotamian statecraft. Babylonia reshaped inherited institutions and ideas. Persian rule governed former Mesopotamian lands through large imperial systems that prized roads, records, satrapies, and scalable administration. Greek observers encountered Babylonian knowledge, especially in astronomy and learned traditions. Rome inherited Eastern administrative experience through conquest, exchange, and the broader Hellenistic world. Late antique and Islamic scholars encountered Mesopotamian legacies through texts, translations, sciences, and the enduring urban centrality of Iraq itself. Centuries later, the lands of Iraq would again become a center of scholarship under Islamic civilization, where translation, astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and administration flourished in new languages and new institutions. That later brilliance did not simply copy Mesopotamia, but it rose on territory already shaped by archives, irrigation, urban continuity, and the very old habit of treating knowledge as a resource worth collecting, refining, and transmitting. The ground remembers everything. Europe inherited, often indirectly, habits of timekeeping, calculation, law, and state reason, shaped partly by this long chain. We live among those inheritances still. We schedule our day in units their mathematics helped define. We accept written contracts as normal. We assume a government should count, record, classify, and store. We live in cities where strangers cooperate through rules rather than kinship alone. We expect roads, measures, archives, taxes, and public authority. We think these are modern reflexes. They are older than most of the monuments we admire. Even the idea of the library as a state project, the archive as a tool of power, the scholar as a servant of administration, carries a Mesopotamian shadow. So does the belief that the sky can be observed systematically, that numbers can organize uncertainty, that a ruler can claim justice through written order. Of course, inheritance is never pure. Greece did not become Mesopotamia. Rome did not become Babylon. Modern states are not ancient city temples in new clothes. But influence does not require sameness. It moves through problems and solutions, through habits that survive because they work, through institutions that are copied, adapted, translated, and renamed. This is why ancient Iraq matters beyond nostalgia. Not because it was first in every category, not because it was perfect, not because it offers a simple origin story. It matters because here, under difficult conditions, human beings learned how to build durable complexity. They learned that water must be managed, that labor must be organized, that memory must be externalized. That exchange needs standards. That surplus creates hierarchy. That hierarchy demands law. That law expands administration. That administration enables empire. That empire gathers knowledge. That knowledge survives power in strange ways. And they learned the cost. Every gain produced maintenance. Every system produced dependence. Every concentration of power created distance between decision and consequence. Every archive implied exclusion as well as preservation. Every city required invisible labor. Every field carried ecological risk. So when we call this region the cradle of civilization, the phrase should not sound soft. A cradle holds vulnerability as much as promise. Early cities were not a golden dawn. They were experiments under pressure, successful enough to change the species, fragile enough to warn it. Look again at Iraq under a modern sun. The rivers are still there, though changed by dams, borders, wars, and modern states. The plains still hold ruins of names that once anchored the human future. Uruk, Ur, Eridu, Babylon, Nineveh. Dust moves over broken walls. Reeds return where water allows. Villages and cities rise beside layers of older life. The landscape is not dead history. It is accumulated decision. And perhaps that is why the old image of Eden keeps lingering here. Not because archaeology can confirm a paradise exactly as later scripture imagined it, but because the memory of abundance beside rivers, of cultivated life wrestled from difficult ground, of a garden that required care, still fits something real. Mesopotamia was never effortless perfection. It was managed fertility, a human garden under risk. That may be the more important truth. The first great urban societies were not born from ease. They were born from maintenance, from clearing silt, from lifting water, from baking brick, from measuring grain, from enforcing weights, from training scribes, from settling disputes, from watching the sky, from trying again after failure. They built with mud, but not with simplicity. They built with belief, but not with innocence. They built with power, but never with full control. And we inherited more than their inventions. We inherited their predicament. How do you organize millions of lives without losing the human scale? How do you extract abundance without poisoning the ground? How do you build institutions strong enough to hold complexity, but not so heavy they crush the people sustaining them? How do you preserve knowledge when power wants to own it? How do you live in systems so vast, no single person can see the whole? Ancient Iraq does not answer these questions for us. It gives us their first durable form. That is why the story still feels close. Not because the people of Uruk were just like us. They were not. But because the world they made still sets terms we recognize. The tablet became the archive. The granary became the institution. The canal became infrastructure. The city-state became the administrative imagination. The royal edict became the legal order. The observation of the heavens became disciplined calculation. The burden of maintenance became civilization itself. They built more than cities. They built patterns. Patterns for storing wealth. Patterns for distributing labor. Patterns for ranking status. Patterns for extending authority. Patterns for making memory durable. Patterns for imagining that order can stand against uncertainty. We did not invent those ambitions. We inherited them. And inheritance is never passive. It lives in every timetable, every tax form, every contract, every census, every archive box, every city block, every anxious debate about water, borders, food, debt, and power. Under a modern sun, Iraq still carries the outline of the oldest bargain.
Build together.
Or break alone.
If you want more stories like this, subscribe.
Civilization still asks the same question the rivers asked first. What can we sustain, and at what cost?